All right, so all the film bros right now are talking about Begonia. They'll be talking about Predator Badlands. I want to stand on my soapbox and talk to everyone today about Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson's new film, Die My Love. Directed by my favorite director, Lynn Ramsey. I thought this movie was utterly incredible. I thought this was so good, and I am always consistently impressed with the way Lynn Ramsey directs, edits, stages performance, just everything about the way she makes movies. And this is no different. She is a director that is obsessed with dark subject matter. She did We Need to Talk About Kevin. If you know what that movie's about, you know how confronting that movie is. She also did You Were Never Really Here with Joaquin Phoenix, which for my money is a better version of Joker. It's an actual good exploration of PTSD, childhood trauma in a vigilante sort of character. Yes, Joker wasn't a vigilante, whatever. But my point being is Lynn Ramsey always cooks. She has not made something that I don't see less than like a 10 or at least a 9 out of 10. I think she's absolutely wonderful. And this is no exception. Jennifer Lawrence is outstanding in this movie. The basic setup here, and I do want to clarify something here. The basic setup here is you are watching a couple, mainly a woman played by Jennifer Lawrence, who are struggling to come to terms with their current life, all right? They're struggling to come to terms with their place in the world. Jennifer Lawrence is not enjoying her new life as a mother. But very importantly, this isn't just a movie about postpartum depression. This is a movie about someone's mental health decaying. Yes, she is a new mother, but this isn't just something that you chalk up to postpartum depression. And Lynn Ramsey said in interviews just this much. She actually described critics saying that this movie was strictly about postpartum depression as utter bullshit. She said it's meant to be an exploration of this couple. It's meant to be an exploration of this individual woman, everything that makes her up, someone who's in a creative block, someone who's frustrated sexually, frustrated emotionally. And yes, part of that is to do with the way people see her as a mother, but it's not simply just something that can be written away as just postpartum. I think that's very important to keep in mind. And the reason I've stressed that here is for people who haven't seen the movie and are going to go see the movie, I actually think it's something to keep in mind. It's something important to focus on because I think the movie reads a lot better if instead of viewing it as a character, a woman played by Jennifer Lawrence, who is in denial of postpartum, it's someone who is speaking earnestly from the heart. She's consistently ignored by people. She's ignored by her husband at times. She's ignored at the checkout. She's ignored by everyone around her.
So do you think you'll have another one?
Yeah, pregnant now. Cooking up twins.
What happened to your hands?
Basically, the moment she became a mother, she became invisible. That is what she's mourning. That is what she's sad about. She actually loves her child. This is shown throughout the movie, and she stresses as such. And to have her issues, to have the things she's dealing with written off by people is just like, oh yeah, the first 6 months are always hard. Everyone goes through postpartum. I think that is meant to hit not as something that she is running away from, not as a diagnosis or not as a diagnosis she is hiding from. It is meant to be seen as a misinterpretation of what she's actually dealing with. I think this idea that everyone around her is just going, oh yeah, just get through the first 6 months is a miscalculation, is a misrepresentation. People aren't showing curiosity or interest in what she's feeling. They are dismissing. She will flat out say why she's sad, why she's frustrated, what she's feeling, and people dismiss it. I think it's been really disappointing to read a lot of the top reviews from critics I actually really expect too, kind of misreading this movie as well. Not only are they seeing it as just an exploration of postnatal depression, and yes, there is stuff in there for sure, and we will get into that in the spoiler section, but not only are people viewing it as that, but they're also saying that there wasn't much characterization for Jennifer Lawrence's character. They feel like we weren't given an explanation as to why she is the way she is, and I think that's frankly absurd. It's all right there in the text. You are either getting these lavish, hallucinatory dream sequences that are a visual representation of what she's feeling, what she's fantasizing about, what she's longing for, or on top of that, you are actually getting extended monologues or these fights with Robert Pattinson where it is being stated very clearly. Frankly, to put it bluntly, this is a woman that feels sexually and occasionally very emotionally abandoned. I think a lot of this is about how she sees her body, how she feels like she's losing her worth as a woman, as a wife, as a partner. A lot of the movie emphasizes this idea that she simply wants to be alone with Robert Pattinson. And that doesn't mean to get rid of the baby. It means she doesn't want to be going out to these family functions. She doesn't want to be dealing with people at the shops who ignore her. She doesn't want to be on the beach ignored by these girls that just want to hang out with the baby and kind of flirt with Robert Pattinson. She wants him back to herself the way they were in that opening montage. And I think Robert Pattinson's performance and characterization is utterly compelling. You are watching Jennifer Lawrence throughout this movie lose her marbles, lose her mind. But what I loved about the way this film was set up is, yes, Jennifer Lawrence does some insane, chaotic things. This is an absolutely hilarious, bleak thrill ride at times. Very sort of a hybrid. It's almost a hybrid of Mother's bombastic nature with the stripped back kind of portrayal of these issues that we need to talk about Kevin explored. But Robert Pattinson's character is portrayed as someone who has a great amount of empathy. He is a bit aloof. He makes really dumb decisions. At the start of the movie, when Jennifer Lawrence is already feeling lonely and isolated, she isn't necessarily struggling with the burdens of being a mother, but she clearly doesn't have very good mental health because she misses Robert Pattinson and she misses who she used to be before becoming a mother. Robert Pattinson gets a loud, barky, annoying as fuck dog, right? Like, he does make some decisions that are well-intentioned on the surface, but are frankly very aloof. But as the movie goes on and the things kind of escalate, Jennifer Lawrence's character's mental health really deteriorates and things escalate to violent, scary outbursts. What I love most about this movie is, even though you might not agree with what she's doing, because she does some very chaotic stuff, again, typical with Lynn Ramsay, you completely understand where it's coming from, and you agree and empathize with the emotional place these things are coming from. An early example is she gets jealous of certain attention Robert Pattinson is giving to this dog, and without spoiling anything, she has a violent outburst that could seriously cause harm to herself, inflict harm upon herself. And even though, yes, most people wouldn't do that, you completely understand where this is coming from. And that's what I love about Lynn Ramsay's writing and direction. She has done this so many times in her movies. Even We Need to Talk About Kevin, right? I'm just going to say it. Of course, I would not do what Kevin did. I think most people would not do what Kevin did. But what she pulled off in that movie as making sure the audience feels that what Kevin did feels like a personal attack to that mother, a response to how he feels abandoned by his mother. And similar, if you've seen Morven Caller, the way a woman handles the death of her boyfriend, the way she grieves, it might not sound great on paper, all right? Legally and ethically speaking, it spits in the face of polite society. But I think what Lynn Ramsay always manages to do is, you watch these films and you get in this headspace and you kind of go, I understand that. I understand all of this. And throughout this movie, I engage with these characters with so much empathy and understanding. And even Robert Pattinson's character could have been this one-dimensional, toxic boyfriend, but instead they emphasize at the start of the movie this sort of lack of education, the background they come from. He is seen as someone who has lost his father, has lost his uncle. He is someone who is also stressed, and he cares and loves Grace deeply. This movie is incredibly romantic in the hardest of ways. It's almost a bit Blue Valentine coded in that way, where it's like these people are kind of awful for each other, but you wouldn't have it any other way. And at the same time, I also think by the end of the movie, you start to feel like, I don't think they would be better off with anyone else. I actually think Robert Pattinson, in a weird way, understands her and she understands him really well. There's this beautiful scene where Robert Pattinson is kind of having like an anxiety attack, and it is caused by Jennifer Lawrence. Like, obviously all the stress of what's going on, but at the same time, she also knows what he needs in that moment. And I thought it was beautiful. And similarly, the escalation of this movie becomes less of a sort of like, how are we going to fix Jennifer Lawrence? How are we going to cure her of what's going on? And instead it becomes an empathetic view. It becomes something, a challenge for the audience, a challenge for Robert Pattinson to sort of go, okay, what does she actually need? What does she want? Does she need to be seen? Does she need to be understood? And I think what's unfortunate, as I mentioned before, one of the core conflicts in this movie is sexual abandonment. I think Jennifer Lawrence's character places a lot of self-worth into that. It's shown in this lovely, incredible, loud montage before the title cut. After the title cut, it's when they have the child. But beforehand, it's shown that they have this intense, palpable sexual chemistry in this fantastic montage. And after that, you never get the sense that they've been intimate again. And the script clarifies this as such. And I think what's hard is initially, yeah, Robert Pattinson, he might have been put off by her new mummy body. Like, yeah, he might have been, unfortunately, a bit shallow in that regard. And Jennifer Lawrence feels that. But as the movie goes on and she starts causing serious harm to herself, she starts causing destruction to people and things around her physically and emotionally, of course he's probably going to be less inclined to sleep with her. He is probably going to be put off. And it's this awful, depressing spiral. It's kind of that situation you hear about in modern dating where it's like the harder you push, the more someone will be pushed away. You can't exactly blame him for not being particularly turned on by someone who's calling him the F slur when he can't get it up. But at the same time, again, what I think Lynn Ramsay is able to do is I was never judging or angry at any of these characters. There are things that happen around pets. There are things that happen around self-harm. There are things that happen around the way people talk to one another and the way people treat each other. And I was never placing blame or judgment. Instead, I had a vast amount of empathy. But on top of that, this movie is deceptively and surprisingly hilarious. A lot of these arguments teeter on the edge of horrific, and then you just start pissing yourself laughing.
I am working. I'm the one cleaning everything up.
Oh, yeah, 3 days a week. Let me shower you in medals.
Because the performance of Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson, both actors that have proved they can be manic and over the top, are so incredibly surprising. This movie is incredibly stripped back and the vibe is palpable and it feels like you're in the room with them for most of the movie. It's incredibly intimate. And then they'll have these loud, cacophonous arguments that I thought were just breathtaking to watch. My mouth, and I'm not saying this as like a metaphor, like my mouth was literally open because I was trying, I couldn't tell whether I was meant to laugh or gasp. I thought it was absolutely wonderful.
You don't think the baby's eating that shit?
Shut up!
My hands are down my pants because you put your dick everywhere except there, asshole.
And then you read reviews online and people are like, Robert Pattinson verbally abuses Jennifer Lawrence. I'm like, if we're going to talk, like, are we serious? You get what I mean? Like, it's such a non-humanistic way to look at these characters. You know, Jackson, played by Robert Pattinson, is a character that if we're keeping a scorecard on what these people have put each other through, like, he's probably coming out all right. And it's just so bizarre to be like, oh, yeah, those arguments were an example of verbal abuse to one another. It feels like it's completely missing the point. You know, this movie deals with sexual desire and lust and even looking outside of the relationship. And I don't think the movie wants you to be sitting there being like, oh my God, one of these characters thinking about cheating, or one of these characters potentially cheated. What pieces of shit? I think the movie is almost saying, like, in the face of like complete self-annihilation and loss of self, are these acts of lust, these acts of flesh, really the kind of biggest deal? You get what I mean? Like, it almost feels like the bigger betrayal is the fact that Robert Pattinson and Jennifer Lawrence aren't having sex with one another, more than the idea that they might look elsewhere. And I'm surprised people are kind of like misreading the movie and having these simple takes. And Lakeith Stanfield has a very minor role, but one that I think is important. I think this movie is one of the few movies that toys with unreliable narration quite well. To me, it was very, very clear what was reliable narration. Anytime Robert Pattinson was on screen, it felt very, very clear up until the ending, which I'll get to later. But for me, anytime Robert Pattinson or any of our other core characters were in the picture, it felt like what we were seeing was literal. But where it got interesting was Lakeith Stanfield's character does feel like this sort of manifestation of delusion and fantasy. And I'll get into that in the spoilers. I'm not going to clarify or spoil anything there, but really glad to see Lakeith Stanfield getting more work. I think he was an absolute, he did one of the best TV performances I've ever seen in Atlanta. He was fantastic in Judas and the Black Messiah. And I'm so glad he's just popping up more. He was in Roofman recently, just a week ago, and I thought he was fantastic there. Sissy Spacek also plays Robert Pattinson's mum, I believe, if I remember correctly. And I thought she was absolutely fantastic. And I thought the relationship between Jennifer Lawrence and Sissy Spacek was fantastic. I think Sissy did initially misread Jennifer Lawrence and what she was going through as simply postpartum, but I think as the movie goes on, she starts to read into the relationship, give Robert Pattinson pointers, but also validate Jennifer Lawrence and get a better sense and a better understanding of what she actually needs. And I thought all of these characterizations, I just thought this movie was wonderful. And I'm really, really disappointed by the lack of critical acclaim I'm hearing. This feels like the first movie of Lynn Ramsey that isn't being like kind of unanimously praised by critics. Her movies have always been audience like divisive for mainstream audiences, and I would expect as such. But I truly find her movies challenging in a really exciting way. I never find them particularly slow. I love that a lot of her movies are about 90 minutes. Like, she really makes these lean, focused movies. I love her shot composition and the way she uses music. And I've always loved her movies. I think I saw We Need to Talk About Kevin when I was like 14. And I loved it then, and I love it even more now. And I just think she's wonderful. And I truly think, like, you know how, like, I don't want to diss anyone, but you know how people that are like stepping into film, right? Stepping into being a fan of film. They'll often be like, film bros will be like, Christopher Nolan, no one does it better than Christopher Nolan. And sometimes I'm like, you know, they'll describe certain Nolan movies as challenging. And I'm not trying to sound pretentious, because on the other end, sometimes there'll be people that are like, my favorite director is someone who filmed A Blank Wall for 43 minutes. And it says so much about the emptiness of our souls. I think Lynn Ramsey strikes this perfect balance of genuinely feeling challenging, but also genuinely making exciting, interesting, engaging films. You know, I don't think any part of her is being performatively artsy. I don't think anyone that appreciates her work is being performative. I think it's genuinely fantastic, challenging cinema. And it feels like me and like Mark Kermode are the only two people that are absolutely like, this woman is completely underrated with the film she makes. So if you guys need film recommendations, go through, I would almost go in reverse order. Go in reverse order of Lynn Ramsey's work. I think We Need to Talk About Kevin, for me, is like the peak, and it's right in the middle of her career too. But going from Die My Love to You Were Never Really Here to Kevin to More Than Color, which, by the way, I watched recently for the first time, I thought was absolutely wonderful. And Ratcatcher is incredible. But getting back, we're about to head into spoilers because I really want to break down this movie, its themes, some of the things that happened. So if you're enjoying this video, please consider subscribing, liking, commenting. On top of that, please consider getting a membership to this channel. It really helps out the channel. For the cost of a cup of coffee a month, you get access to a fortnightly or weekly podcast where I talk about every single thing I've watched, both new and old, both at the cinema or at home, shows, movies, documentaries, books, anything like that. All right, let's get into it. Links are in description below. 3, 2, 1, spoilers. So this movie does have a circular nature to it, all right? The ending doesn't give us much resolution, but dare I say, I actually think there is some resolution. I think if you are viewing the movie as not this just individual spiral, but also a couple spiraling together, almost like folie à deux, right? Like a shared manic depression, I think there's something really interesting that happens at the end of the movie. I don't think the ending is meant to be interpreted. Like, obviously the fire wasn't real, but I think metaphorically speaking, there is something happening here. I think what it is they have this beautiful moment in the car at the end of the movie. Absolutely loved it. By the way, anytime Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson are in the car together, I could have watched this movie for about 12 hours. There were so many sequences in this movie with the two of them together, and even Jennifer Lawrence alone, where I was like, I don't want this movie to end. I'm having such a good, on my toes experience with this movie. But this beautiful scene, and there are some really beautiful scenes in this movie. I wish I stressed that more in the spoiler-free section, but the love they have for each other and the care they have for each other might seem fucked up to a lot of people, but I think it's truly, throughout the movie, it's Robert Pattinson getting a bigger and larger understanding of what she needs. I didn't mention it in the spoiler-free section, but there's this moment in a review I read where someone was like, Robert Pattinson decides at the peak of her mental spiral that getting married to her, proposing, is a good idea, as if that's what she needs. And I'm like, no, I think he read the room right. I think she was genuinely, earnestly, really excited for that. Again, if we are going with the idea that she truly wants to be seen by Robert Pattinson, she wants to feel close to him again, I think that's what she needed. And I think whenever that is broken, that's when these feelings intensify. But I was so glad, because Lynn Ramsey often plays with non-linear structure and narration. Non-linear structure and non-linear sequencing of events. And I thought this one was actually very linear. It wasn't flashing back or flashing outwards. It was just whether things were fantasy or not. But you have this section where he starts crawling with her together, and I was like, oh, this feels like a breath of fresh air. Like, it feels like they're actually meeting on each other's level. He's getting down in the mud with her, literally. Like, he's getting in the dirt and crawling around with her. I thought it was a beautiful moment, and then he says, let's get married. Now, at this point, I assume they were married because of the kid, which is my bad. But I went, oh shit, I hope this isn't a flashback. I hope this is present because this makes the movie a little more beautiful and a little more moving. And yes, it was in the present day. I was keeping an eye out for the uncle, and then I was like, okay, cool, the baby's there, awesome. Loved the wedding sequence. And I think, yeah, it's hard for Robert Pattinson. I absolutely love the sequence where, yeah, she strips down to her underwear. And I think this is a moment where she wants to be seen. It's a very physical display of like, please see me as a sexual object again, or just see me for me again. And he can't do it. It causes an anxiety attack because he's so embarrassed by what everyone else is going to think. And I think that's a big thing too. I think when Robert Pattinson and Jennifer Lawrence are truly alone, which is probably why Jennifer Lawrence wants this, when they're truly alone, it feels like they can match each other's freak, for lack of a better term. Like he'll be freaky with her. He'll be a bit manic. He'll be a bit crazy. I think she kind of likes that. It's that sort of thing of like, I like a little fight. I like someone that's getting on my level. And I think in that party scene, he's so caught up on what are people going to think, when truthfully, I think what she would have wanted, my wife asked me, what do you think she wanted? What do you think she needed? If not therapy, if not this? And I was like, I think she wanted to be truly seen. I think she wanted to be met on her level and feel seen. And so as a result, in that party sequence, I think what she wanted was probably him to join her in the pool. Not to yell at her, not to be like, people are looking. I think she probably wanted him to also strip down and jump in the pool with her. And I think he would have done that if they were home alone, but not around these fake, vapid, judgy people. I loved all these sequences where Jennifer Lawrence was, at the checkout. Hilarious moment. Love that checkout scene where it's like, that girl is being polite, but at the same time, like, because it's framed from Jennifer Lawrence's perspective, and that's when I knew this is striking for something deeper than just a simple postpartum. It's going for this, it's not just a hatred of the kid. She doesn't hate the kid. She hates the lack of attention and focus she gets. She states, hey, I don't want 2 packets of mac and cheese. I want the one. This woman completely disregards it, keeps pushing, keeps wanting to have a conversation, but the conversation's with the baby. Everything Jennifer Lawrence is saying is ignored. And yes, obviously it's an abrasive thing to do, but I got where she was coming from. That is the thing throughout the movie. The moment she sees Robert Pattinson is torn up about the dog, the carcass of this annoying pet, at least for her, rather than the carcass of their previous sex life and how intimate they used to be. She's like, what about me? And throws herself through the glass. There's that incredible scene where she starts scratching up the walls and he's sitting there talking about taking a shit. There's some really great stuff in this movie. And getting back to the ending, right, when she goes into the woods and everything sets on fire, they've had this beautiful moment in the car. He even says he's going to try harder, at which point, by the way, might I add, I think he'd been trying very hard, just not in the right way. And I don't think that's for a lack of effort or a lack of care. I think the hard thing is, as I said before, yes, I think what she needs is she wants to feel desired. She wants to feel sexual. She wants to feel like she can be creative again. There's that moment where she's trying to paint and her breast milk starts leaking into the painting. It's a physical representation of this idea of, how she's seen and her self-worth is getting in the way of this stuff post having a child. But also at the same time, she wants to be seen for the individual person she is, not just the mother of his kids. It's a big lean into the Madonna Hall complex as well. I think her walk out into the woods, I felt like he could see the fire as well. The fire obviously isn't real. It was spontaneous combustion from what it looked like, right? The whole woods were going, like, very not real. But what's important is it's real to her, or at least it's a visual movie representation of what she's feeling. But he is also horrified. He is also seeing this. He's also finally seen her, seeing what she's going through, and maybe he's not on the same level of her. But to me, yes, it's a look of horror, but also to me, it felt like a look of understanding, a look of, I didn't realize this is what's going on in your head. This is what you're going through. Now, whether that was a discussion, whether she just went out into the woods naked and he finally went, that's what you want. You want to be your pure self, whatever. I just took the ending of, he finally gets that it's not therapy she needs. It's not a beautiful restoration of this house that she needs. None of that. She was shooting from the hip when she was like, oh, we have to live in this shithole. You probably pissed on the floor, blah, 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 blah. She doesn't really care. The same way, like, his big issue wasn't exactly just like, oh, there's shit on the floor. You know what I mean? Like, their issues was something else. But I feel like in that moment, he did actually see her. He went, okay, like, it's not therapy. It's not parties with friends. It's not any of this performative stuff. You just want that vibe we had before the title drop. You want that vibe we had when we were dancing and fucking around and banging, you know? And yeah, I don't think it's purely sexual, but I think this is very much a psychosexual movie. It's a big part of the movie, and you know, it gets visceral at times. There's that scene where she wants to have sex with him. He's like, my mum's right there. He can't get it up instantly. And yeah, like, again, like, if we're talking, like, that's why the critic pissed me off so much, being like, oh, you verbally abuses, blah, blah, blah. It's like if I started talking about, like, oh, she actually essayed Robert Pattinson in that moment, and, like, she actually shamed him for not being able to get erection. It's like, these are broken human people with human emotions. And I just feel like the way people engage with movies nowadays, where everything needs to be a specific social commentary that can be boiled down into something easy to understand. Someone needs to be the bad guy. Someone needs to be the good guy. Someone needs to be the abuser. Someone needs to be a rapist, blah, 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 blah. You know, and it's just like, why can't we ever reckon with characters that are human? Like, are you perfect? Am I perfect? Do we not have discussions with people growing up that we look back on and go, holy shit? And I think these people are framed as people that are uneducated, lacking resources, lacking the mental fortitude to navigate these situations properly. I think that's an important part of the movie. Leaning back to Lakeith Stanfield, there is a moment where I thought it was in her head, but a physical representation of her anxieties. There's this moment where Jennifer Lawrence calls Robert Pattinson and he's having lunch, right? And he's eating away at a burger, and I think he just wants some, like, alone time after work or maybe on his lunch break. And for Jennifer Lawrence, it's this huge thing of, like, I would have loved to have dinner with you. Are you still going to have room for dinner? Like, you know, she feels left out. She feels alone. And at the same time, like, Robert Pattinson's allowed to have a meal, but you get the rift, right? And I don't think any waitress was actually calling him daddy. Like, there's some very clever audio and visual editing where it's like, you see the waitress is all the way at the other end of the room. He's not thinking about her twice. And the audio of daddy is, like, so loud, it can't possibly be right in the phone, right? So she isn't hearing anything, but it's her getting swept up in this idea that he's probably cheating when he is just having a meal, and that's all he intends to do. But at the same time, we do get the idea that she is not only fantasizing. Initially, those sequences with the helmet, Lakeith Stanfield's character with the helmet, feel like fantasy. The knife scene where she gets him to cut his lip are probably almost definitely fantasy. And this is confirmed because when she sees the real Lakeith Stanfield, the real Carl in real life, and he's got a wife and a kid. Now, I do think they are having an affair because he's mortified to see her. I don't think it's purely because she's got cuts on her face. I think he's mortified that she's going to out their affair. But important to notice, he doesn't have a cut on his lip. So I think she was having these fantasy sequences. About someone she was having an affair with, and maybe that affair is also what was kicking these things off. It's like, I want to have sex with Robert Pattinson. I'm not getting that. I'm having this affair with this neighbor or this guy that kind of lives somewhat around. And at the same time, I think there was some guilt eating away at her for doing that. And she was projecting that onto Robert Pattinson. And again, it's this moment of this cycle, right? He's not maybe giving her everything that she needs, and he's being pushed away emotionally, even if not on purpose, but that exacerbates things. That exacerbates her loneliness. And similarly, she cheats, and then he feels pushed away, and then he feels unattracted, and I think he starts cheating. At first, I did believe him. I think he was being earnest at first when he was like, no, you've seen those condoms before. I completely bought that. Throughout the movie, though, you see that condom packet change. And I don't think that was an example of unreliable narration. And I don't think they were wearing condoms to have sex because they had a child before marriage. So I did take it as, yeah, at a certain point he was pushed away enough that he also started cheating. And they're both to blame in this situation. I'm not saying that he only did that as a response to her, but I think it's this difficult situation. I mean, you do need to have some empathy and understanding for him as well. Like, what would you do in that relationship? And at the same time, I really appreciate he never actually blamed her for his cheating, if that was happening. He never blamed her also, more importantly, for her mental health. At a certain point, right, she does exhibit very violent displays. That, you know, she blows up a condom at a certain point when he's calmly telling her to stop, causes a car accident where he injures a horse, completely tanks his car. She shoots his dog. at a certain point. And yes, that dog needed to be put down, but that dog needed to be put down because that dog was injured in that car crash. The dog was previously just barking. Now the dog is in pain and whimpering. And so she needs to put it down. I agree that she needed to put it down, but that is purely a response, or that situation is purely because of the car crash that happened. But more importantly is I was sitting there for a while in the movie being like, if ever there was going to be a moment where a husband snaps and hits his wife, this is probably going to be the movie. And I was, to give credit to him, impressed with his ability to try and regulate. And it results in a moment where he's borderline having anxiety attacks and heart issues. And I love that there's this moment of genuine concern for her. For Robert Pattinson. And then they're in the car afterwards, after she admittedly aces taking care of him in that moment, a beautiful moment. And then they're in the car and he's like, yeah, maybe I need to take better care of myself. I just didn't realize how stressed I am. I've just been stressed with everything. And she goes, oh, really? What's been stressing you out? Like the ultimate shit test. I was cackling. I thought Robert Pattinson was really funny, and Jennifer Lawrence was absolutely flawless in this movie. Probably her best performance. A very loud performance, and I think a lot of her best performances have been these loud performances. But there is no reason. I can't believe people don't like Jennifer Lawrence. I think Jennifer Lawrence is maybe not quite as good as Emma Stone, but she's pretty close. They're both having these incredible careers where they've transcended their sort of like teen star status into these incredibly diverse actors. I mean, Robert Pattinson too. And I loved the dynamic between Grace, Jennifer Lawrence's character, and Sissy Spacek's character, Pam, right? Robert Pattinson's mum in this movie. Just these interesting conversations where Pam isn't quite understanding Jennifer Lawrence and Jennifer Lawrence isn't quite understanding Pam. Also, is this reading into it too much? But did anyone read that Pam might have put the uncle out of his misery the same way Grace did the dog, given the fact that she wouldn't clarify where he shot himself? And at a certain point, you're like, okay, where did he shoot though? Like, if it wasn't any of those things. And I thought the curtness that Jennifer Lawrence was displaying in that conversation almost suggested that she was leveling with her. And as the movie went on and you saw these visuals of her walking around with the gun and then Jennifer Lawrence meeting him in the woods and all this stuff, I was kind of like, oh, okay, like maybe that did happen. Maybe Sissy Spacek did put him out of his misery. I don't know though. That might be a complete reach, but as the movie went on, it felt like Sissy Spacek went from purely treating Jennifer Lawrence as just another mom, having difficulty with the first 6 months, to actually going like, okay, she's dealing with some crazy stuff, and I'm dealing with some crazy stuff now. And Nick Nolte, Henry, is it Henry or Harry? Sorry, Harry's character, the uncle that was dealing with what seemed to be dementia, was also dealing with this stuff. It seemed like she was actually like, okay, I'm starting to get familiar with what you need, She wasn't necessarily pushing. At a certain point, she stopped pushing Robert Pattinson to take her to therapy. And when she ran out into the woods with the child, might I add, she went, leave her. Let her do that. Let her go. She'll come back. And I thought it was a really beautiful moment. I thought it was a moment where these characters are slowly realizing, I don't think therapy is it. I love that scene with the therapist as well, where the therapist is like, do you resent your child, or like, are you dealing, postpartum is very common. And Jennifer Lawrence says, no, like it's not the child. It isn't the child. And I don't have abandonment issues. And I think that's important to clarify. Yes, she has issues with being abandoned, because she is being abandoned on a sexual level and occasionally on an emotional level by everyone around her. And Robert Pattinson, yeah, he does falter and stumble in some ways. I don't think she has clearly how she acts and the things she does are concerning. But I think the place they're coming from aren't irrational. And I think the way all these other characters talk about what she's going through, talk about what she's feeling, it's never with a true sense of curiosity. They never have these long sit downs of like, oh, why don't you feel like you can do art? Why don't you feel like this? Oh, do you think he doesn't love you anymore? Well, I think he might, but maybe not in that way, blah, 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 right? Like, no one ever really levels with her on the way that she needs. And it becomes this like palpable physical thing with her. It eventually escalates to this point where it's like, I just want to be seen. I want my body to be seen. I want you to see me. And I think that's why the fire in the woods at the end is so striking and is so powerful. And again, yeah, I was struck by how romantic I found this movie. It was two people, yes, losing their mind together, but it almost feels like by the end of the movie, it's saying, let me do this. let me purge this, or maybe this is just me now while I'm adjusting to my new existence and trying to get you on my level and trying to get you to see me the way I want to be seen. And that's why I think maybe there is a bit of hope at the end of the movie. You know, Robert Pattinson's sitting there and he has been trying. In my opinion, he has been trying, especially towards the end. But he still sits there, and again, like he never hits her, he never throws her. He looks horrified by the nail scene. He doesn't even yell at her about the car. And that's when I kind of started seeing him a bit favorably. At first, I did think he was being a dickhead with the dog. And I did think he was maybe missing some cues with getting the burger and the condom stuff and all that. But in that scene where the car crashed and he went over to the tree and was clearly losing his shit, I actually thought, no, this is a guy that really loves her. Any other guy would have left. Any other guy would have lost his shit. And I think the fact that he was willing to go through these anxiety attacks and even in the car just be like, oh, you know, I've just been a bit stressed. Like I didn't realize this stuff was building up. I think it's a guy that isn't equipped for this stuff, really trying to deal with it. And Jennifer Lawrence is purely acting on impulse here, but it's an understandable impulse and need for love. And frankly, I'm just going to say it. I don't like pitting women against one another. But the experience I had with this movie was 100% the experience I wanted to have with If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. And I think this movie kind of achieves everything that movie was trying to do, like way, way better, right? Like in that movie, the whole idea of like you never see the child was so you focus purely on the mother's experience and not the baby, right? A very noble pursuit. I just think this movie did it better. I think, unfortunately, people are misreading this movie and focusing on her identity as a mother and purely chalking it up to postpartum. And Lynn Ramsay, as I said, has talked about the idea that this is utter bullshit, but she even talked about in the Cannes press tour, I think it was Cannes, but she talks about in an interview this idea of like, I almost didn't adapt it because I feel like we need to talk about, Kevin was talked about, you know, postpartum and the ripple effects of that on the child as well. And that's why I think we need to talk about Kevin is so compelling, because you can't really blame Tilda Swinton entirely in that movie. You can't blame her, like, but at the same time, I think that kid felt that this woman did not want to be a mum, did not like being a mum, and that resentment festered and turned into this Cold War. But back to Die My Love, I think, yeah, the idea that everyone's watching this movie just being like, yeah, I mean, postpartum's hard, postpartum, it feels really ironic to me, because the movie feels like it's almost this onslaught of people misunderstanding and trying to simplify down her issues. And some of the issues are Robert Pattinson not finding her sexually attractive, her lack of ability to create anymore, her lack of ability for people to even engage and be curious about what she wants to create. And in a way, like some of the destruction she causes is art, you know, like even that scene where she's like clawing at the room feels like this artistic expression. And there are all these great moments. Like I just knew the movie was cooking from the jump. It almost feels surreal, where she'll just, almost like American Psycho, where she'll say stuff about like, oh yeah, I scratched my nails off, or I did this, or like I burnt my hands baking your shitty thing. And like, I don't think these were in her head. I don't think she wasn't saying this. I think she was saying this, and people were just ignoring her. People weren't even, like, people didn't even want to begin to approach it, begin to address it, begin to confront it. Like, they were just like, whatever. And I will say, at least Robert Pattinson, he gets annoyed by these things that she says, but at least he does, they register. You know what I mean? And I think that's what this struggle that they're in together is, this idea that he wants to be able to take his foot off the gas and have some space and reconnect with her. And he does want to be able to do that. And he tries to handle it initially in conventional ways, but she entirely needs someone that will handle this in an unconventional way and approach her with empathy and understanding. And maybe you can't diagnose this. Maybe you can't write this down on paper. I just want you to feel it. And that's why I think the ending, where they're in the fire, he's vibing it. He's feeling it. And he is horrified. He's bewildered by what he's seen. But I think, yeah, ultimately, that's what makes the movie compelling. I think cutting it back into this moment where she's leaving the home, this welcome home mummy, it's like, this isn't my home. This idea of what I should be as this, is it Stepford wife? This idea of what people want me to be, just purely this mother, just mummy's home. That isn't me. That isn't home. That isn't home for my brain. That isn't home for my emotions. That 100% is not it. but me purely who I am, engaging with my own mental decline and engaging with these big feelings. I want you to feel them. I want you to understand it. And I think, I mean, how more stripped bare can you be than naked in the woods alone, and him observing that and seeing this metaphorical fire that she creates by doing that, and the power within that. That's what I took it as. I did take it as a bit optimistic. I either took it as they're forever going to be in this spiral, but they understand each other and what they need. And I think he's built to handle it, minus that one anxiety attack. But I think also that anxiety attack was partially caused by public embarrassment. I think if they'd been home alone, he would have been like, okay, she's naked in the pool. But, you know, everyone was probably running up to him being like, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? But no, I think weirdly enough, I think they'll probably mentally deteriorate a bit too. But I think if they're alone together with this kid, I actually think they'll be okay. I think the only part that really registered as postpartum to me was at the very start, where it was genuinely really early days of motherhood, and she crawled over and put a knife near the baby. It almost felt like, well, if the baby does something by accident, I mean, whatever. But aside from that, that's the only moment that felt like, and it felt like that was quickly abandoned. It felt like that wasn't truly what she wanted. Aside from that, I felt like it was more focused on, yes, postpartum feelings for sure, and a lot of it probably was postpartum depression, but I think a lot of what she was feeling was valid. And I think it's something that society should maybe interrogate more, this loss of oneself when you become specifically a mum. You know, when it's often talked about, I mean, male comedians joke about this idea of, you know, being a dad's awesome. You know, this idea of where pregnant is almost offensive because the husband's going out doing pull-ups and crushing it, and the woman's having to deal with all the hard difficulties. And I think specifically it does feel like the expectations of being a mother and the way, you know, a mother's career is sacrificed in the way she is purely seen as a mother. And if she does something, she's a bad mother, whereas the dad can often get away with just being a workaholic and getting drinks with the boys. I think that's what this movie's interrogating. And yet again, it's a Lynn Ramsay movie that's going to be completely misunderstood. Similar to the way Morgan Keller, everyone was like, oh, she's actually quite an unlikable protagonist and she does some questionable things with her grief. I'm like, no, that's a pure expression, maybe a miscalculated one, but you should have read Morgan Keller to me as someone who is really deeply in love with the person they've lost and grieving in a way that only makes sense to them. And I think people need to engage with this movie with more curiosity and empathy and understanding. But ultimately, I thought this movie was utterly fantastic. I think it's my favorite movie of the year. Fuck yeah. Around Eddington, Begonia, 28 Years Later, and what's the other one? Twinless. But yeah, this clears it for me. I was absolutely loving this. Mouth open for a lot of it, and consistently hilarious, moving, great, just awesome. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, everyone. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And again, as I mentioned before, consider gaining a membership to this channel. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and have a lovely day.